percussion world contains a large variety of rattles, rasps, and shakers, but very few of them tell a story. Well, this raven rattle not only tells a mystical story, but it's also a legal document in wood. Welcome, I'm Hans Manship, your host for Musical Minutes. Let's pay a visit to the Kwakiutl tribe and their chief Wakish and find out more. The classic 1800s Haida Kwakiutl Raven Rattle is one of the most iconic ceremonial objects of the Northwest Pacific Coast. They were traditionally the exclusive property of high-ranking chiefs and were used in ceremonial dances, chiefly speeches, healing rituals of medicine men or shamans. Raven rattles were not just decorative, they were legal documents in wood. These rattles have been found in shamans' graves, suggesting multiple uses not only by just the chiefs. The rattle carvings tell the origin story of tribal chief Wakish, based on Kwakiutl oral tradition. The legend is known throughout North America's Pacific Northwest and is seen in dozens of similar rattles in regional museums. The raven rattle depicts all the characters in the legend: the raven, kingfisher, frog, and man, and tells of flight, a quest for ceremonial music and dance, and the first totem pole. I first saw a raven rattle in a museum in Vancouver, Canada. I took photos and then carved this rattle out of poplar wood, following traditional designs and colors. Since then, I've seen dozens throughout Canada, Alaska, and the Pacific Northwest, and I love the story it tells. I've been intrigued by their customs and art ever since I first studied them in the early 1970s and carved a 14-foot totem pole which remained in a children's park in Florida for 30 years. The legend begins. Long ago, in the time when animals still spoke and the world was young, there lived a chief named Wakish. Though his people were strong and prosperous, one thing troubled him deeply. His village had no music, no dance, and no ceremonies to bind their hearts together. Wakish watched neighboring clans celebrate with songs that echoed across the water, and he longed for his people to share in that joy. But music and dance were not yet known in his land. They belonged to the sky people, who guarded them jealously. One evening, as Wakish sat by the fire, Frog emerged from the shadows. Frog was no ordinary creature. He was a messenger between worlds, able to travel where humans could not. "I can help you," Frog said, "but we must journey far, and we cannot go alone." Frog called upon Raven, the great transformer, who could travel between realms with ease. Raven agreed to carry Frog and Wakish on his back to the sky world where the songs and dances were kept. But the journey was dangerous. The sky people would not give up their treasures willingly. So Kingfisher, the swift hunter of the water's edge, joined them. Kingfisher held Frog gently in his beak, not as prey, but as a conduit of power, guiding and protecting him as they crossed into the upper world. Together, the three beings flew upward until they reached the Sky People's lodge. There, Frog used his cunning to slip inside and steal the first songs, the first rhythms, and the first dance steps ever known, and the beautiful totem pole. Raven carried Frog and the sacred gifts back to Wakish's village. When they returned, the chief gathered his people. Frog released the songs. Raven released the dances. Kingfisher released the power that allowed humans to perform them, and the beautiful totem. And from that day forward, Wakish's people had ceremony, dance, music, a ceremonial totem, and joy. Gifts carried on the wings of raven, guided by kingfisher, and delivered by frog. And that's how these gifts were first brought to the Kwakiutl people. The symbolism of the rattle represents raven as the transporter, trickster, and bringer of gifts. Kingfisher bird as a spirit helper who mediates power. Frog as a messenger between realms, and a human figure receiving supernatural gifts. The joined tongues show communication and shamanic power exchange. Underneath Raven's belly often shows a large face with hooked beak. The underside of the raven shows the belly face, which they believed represented the spirit force inside the raven. Pebbles and metal pieces inside create the rattle sound. The story of Wakiash and the Raven Rattle is as interesting as the colors, symmetry, and characters depicted here. I hope you've enjoyed learning about this unique tribe on the Northwest Pacific Coast. So until we meet again, may God richly bless you as you pursue God's creation of music and the instruments mankind has made for enjoyment.